Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is Detox. Today I'm going to be talking with Alexie Sommer. Alexie is a strategic designer and communicator and co-instigator of Design Declares and co-founder of Urge Collective. Alexie, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. So when we set up Urge Collective about 5 years ago now, it was based on a frustration that we've been working in sustainable design for about maybe 20 years, all of us, and not seeing much happening and changing. So it was sort of born out of a frustration that we wanted to see more things moving, especially with this backdrop of kind of climate emergency and crisis, and the language changing quite drastically based on kind of IPCC reports. So that was the catalyst. And then one of the very early projects was a research project at the Design Museum. The Waste Age exhibition is all about the role of design in designing out waste. I think we went to them and said, look, if you're going to do this,
let's do it right.
Let's do an environmental audit of an exhibition itself. Let's go a bit meta on this and see what goes in, what happens, and what comes out.
As in into the show itself.
Into the show itself. So that was a sort of 8 or 9 month research project looking at essentially doing an LCA of an exhibition.
Cool.
So what comes in, all the preparation, or the design process, the 2D, 3D, kind of choosing all the artworks, where they come from, the structures, all being assembled, observing that process, and what happens during the kind of life phase of the exhibition, and then what comes out the end, and a lot of all that value that's invested in structures and so little appreciation is put onto what happens at the end of the exhibition. A lot of it goes in the skip.
Yep.
Because a lot of them are on a very kind of quick commercial time frame. There's an exhibition every 6 months. It doesn't sound like it sounds like quite a long period of time, but that's quite a short period of time to get a great exhibition together. And there's some big flaws in that process, but that's something that doing an audit kind of reveals. And on the back of that, we created a guide, which is a very top level guide about how to reduce the environmental impact of an exhibition. It's called Exhibition Design for Our Time.
Is that still live?
That's kind of published. It's kind of been released by the Design Museum. And alongside that, we produced a carbon tool. So having done that process, the audit, we came up with a carbon footprint for that exhibition. And that was based on a spreadsheet, impact model. And now with the guide, we released that carbon tool and helps you model emissions related to an exhibition. With the kind of slightly softer spreadsheet version, you can tailor it to an institution's sort of business model and flow and energy strategy and that type of thing, which is not so easy with the kind of all singing, all dancing interface-led tool. But that is the majority of work that we do at Urge. And I suppose then Design Declares was something that Sophie Thomas and I talked a lot about. So Michael Paulin is, he is part of Urge Collective. He set up Architects Declare straight after Extinction Rebellion, pressure on the British government to kind of declare a climate emergency. And quite quickly, Engineers Declare came out of that. And we were watching this and wondering, who's going to do Design Declares? We were sort of scratching our head on the sofa and thinking, how do we go about doing it? And then the Design Council convened myself, Joe Barnard, Abdi Tayu, and Aurélie Leonette. We had a representative from each of the design disciplines that we're representing. So as a communication designer, I invited Thomas Matthews to also join the charge. Joe runs Marama, which is an industrial design practice. Abdi is a B Corp of his digital design practice and has been kind of leading the charge in kind of greening digital design for a long time. And Aurélie was working at Snoop at the time and really embedded in kind of looking at kind of what tools service designers can use to kind of really bring the planet and kind of social justice narratives into the service design offer. For me, the value of Design Declares is it's a signifier for designers who are engaged, who want to kind of talk about this stuff, who are investigating their practice, who are trying to shift and harness the tools of industry to respond to the climate crisis.
Is that one of the things that you sort of envision for it in the future, that it kind of becomes almost like a directory?
It definitely works as that type of directory already, but it's a self-selecting. So we're very specifically not policing practices. We don't have an assessment like the B Corp assessment. We have put this out there as a call to kind of unite designers and bring them together to share and exchange around this idea. The energy really needs to be spent on bringing people together so they understand kind of how they can approach this and they don't feel isolated by it.
Yeah.
As we all know, it's when you start scratching the surface of kind of the system within which we're designing and the impact of the design process, it's quite intimidating and it's incredibly complex. And actually that's where we need to come together and share knowledge.
Yeah.
So for me, that's one of the biggest drivers of design declares in that sense. There's a big tension about the commercial aspects of sustainability and embedding them in projects. Everyone come back saying, oh, it's much more expensive to do it sustainably. But that's not necessarily the case if you take a design efficiency approach and you really look, say, at a product and you make it much leaner.
Yeah.
And you really look at how it functions and you minimize materiality and you look at form and you have the time to kind of look at that product and kind of make it efficient. That can save you a huge amount of money. There was a fantastic film at the Design for Planet Festival which showed the kind of the linear model from the video perspective. So from extraction through to kind of manufacturing, and the scale that, you know, this functions at is incredible. And it's awe-inspiring and terrifying when you see, you know, oil extraction and you see kind of iron ore being kind of taken out of the ground and transformed into iron. You know, those systems are functioning on a daily basis and will continue to do so. We have to understand our role within them as designers to kind of look at how we interface with them and the piece that we are responsible for, take responsibility for, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that does require kind of understanding your own discipline that much better and really researching the materials that you're specifying and working with, and really get back to kind of understanding how those things that you're making are being kind of perceived and used in the world, and getting the feedback in from. Also, thank goodness that actually sustainability is front and center as a dialogue at the moment.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it wasn't, we'd all be even more terrified.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, thank God it is sort of trendy or kind of relevant or necessary to kind of be part of the dialogue today, which wasn't the case when I graduated from the Royal College, you know, 20 odd years ago. It definitely wasn't. It was a minority voice.
Yeah.
And so actually that's encouraging to see just in those 20 years, that shift. If we think about how long we've been around and sort of the time scale, we aren't going to shift this overnight, but it is definitely changing. And the landscape has changed quite dramatically over the last 10 years. And that always gives me kind of hope and sort of encouragement that we will kind of solve these problems.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you think about the Industrial Revolution, that took a long time to embed. You know, we have the pressure of the green transition that is like, we need to get to this by 2030, 2035, 2040. You know, it's coming at us quite quickly. And there's a panic with that. There needs to be this balance between those two dialogues. It's like you know, there are moments we can do a sprint. You know, look at what the pandemic taught us. If there is alignment, if there is kind of political and kind of societal alignment, things shift and they happen incredibly quickly. You know, and there is the school of thought where if it affects you, then you'll do something about it. And I think this is the challenge we still all face of it with the climate crisis, is that the impact isn't so physical.
Was this always a big part of your motivation, your personal motivation for designing for this, like for sustainability?
Yes. You know, I don't know whether I had a eureka moment. When I graduated from Royal College, I made a chair out of recycled cardboard because I was interested in the origins of where things come from. Well, personally for me, it was embedded in childhood. It was embedded in kind of, it was much more fun outdoors than it is inside. And there was a lot of kind of, you know, adventure in the natural world. And that to me seems like part of who we are and how we function. We are not kind of intellectualized from nature. We are part of it. But I think also that is definitely a mindset. It's not the majority mindset.
With the work you're doing through Urge, when new clients come to you, or you know, and you're starting these new projects, are you, because sustainability is so ingrained in what Urge does, do you find that the clients that you get already have that in mind, or do you find that you're still sort of having to frame, the value of regenerative business
all the
practices?
clients come, we don't do any marketing.
Fantastic.
All the clients come to us because they've read about the work that we've done and they want to do something. So in that sense, you don't have to do any convincing.
No, that's great.
It's not there. And I think this is not a minority desire. I think a lot of businesses out there really want to respond, just not quite sure how.
Mm.
And I think part of that challenge is understanding where our impact is. So when clients come to you with that in mind, you don't even have to have the conversation. Like, right, how do we tailor it to what you're doing?
Yeah.
That's the conversation.
Do you find that there's lots of that happening with the clients that come to you? Like you were just saying that they go, we don't know what to do, and are they sort of arriving and saying, help us so that we don't feel greenwashy? Or?
No, actually, quite a lot have started to kind of research their own operations, business practice, but they don't necessarily have any data to kind of give more of a kind of evidence-based approach to that. So I think that's where we help, certainly on the kind of exhibition design project with Verge Collective. When we set up Design Declares, we went to some of the big global design practices, and I won't name any names, but they didn't want to sign for two reasons. They were worried that they still had bad clients, or they're very aware that in one of their global offices in the US or in Europe, they had clients,
unquote, bad clients.
Yeah, that, and they also needed to get a united voice. And in a big corporate context, big agency context, you need everyone to agree to sign. So I think that was half the kind of struggle. Some were that way inclined and others aren't. And we're still sort of knocking at the door going, right, are you ready to sign now? Because actually the point is that you need to do the work from the inside.
Yeah.
So we can't pretend that you're standing outside businesses and saying, you've got to do this. We're saying you actually have to work with, you have to be in it to win it. You have to understand your clients, Coca-Cola's business model to understand how you make it better. Or Lufthansa's business model to understand how you can make things more efficient and, make them more streamlined. So these are about incremental stages as well. So designers are very good at that, but they're also very good at big picture thinking and applying creativity to these big problems.
Now that we're trying to grow this movement of Design Declares, and it's going really well. I mean, we've got Design Declares Brazil.
So when we first set up Design Declares, there was some great advice there. Really don't kind of narrow this down to something that's kind of UK based. Open it up.
Yeah.
And then our response was, well, yes, but we don't understand regulation in Sweden, or we don't understand the kind of design sector in Norway, or we have no idea who's the institutional voice in Brazil or in Africa. How do we navigate that? So we set up Design Declares with the intention for it to be a global community and put out that call.
Yeah.
So that is an open invitation for countries to take on board Design Declares for their own design sector. And that requires a steering group which represents the 4 disciplines, but ultimately an institutional voice or a kind of design funding voice to really enable the Design Declares in the country to flourish. We have Design Declares Ireland. They were the first to take it on, and it's led by the Designers Institute of Ireland and Charlotte Barker. And then very quickly Design Declares Brazil joined, and they have a more kind of organic process. We recently onboarded Design Declares Australia. That's being run from Sydney for a kind of Australian audience, and it's doing incredibly well.
It is. I see it all the time.
So to enable that, we developed a social franchise contract so that Design Declares can kind of keep a united set of values, and the brand of Design Declares maintains its credibility. But everyone who's joined has the right intention with Design Declares, and that's really exciting. So we're looking to onboard, hopefully, organisation in France and in Germany and in the US by middle of next year. That's kind of one of the goals.
What do you want to see next? Like, are there new sort of initiatives that you want Design Declares to take on, or sustainability?
For me, the most important thing now is to really understand who is in the Design Declares community. And that we do by putting on events and bringing people together. So what I really personally want to understand is kind of what everyone's pain point is. Where are they struggling with kind of responding to the 8 acts, or in their own practice, what are the bits of information they would love to have the time to research but can't? That's kind of our current kind of vision, is really, really getting to grips with kind of the design declares community as it stands and what they want and need. We have a project on the go to write a series of design discipline guides. And I mean, long-term vision, we were thinking, wouldn't it be incredible if actually we have spaces dedicated to design declares? So sort of more of a kind of co-working educational hub
workshop
idea, maker space, where there is that kind of collaboration. Because once you understand using the community, the next obvious step is to kind of work together and cross collaborate, and bringing opportunities to those designers. I think, if there is a group of designers who are engaged, one of the hopes is that we kind of bring interesting clients and interesting projects to the network. We've got a lot of ideas. We're looking at a 10-year vision for Design Declared, based on the kind of the 7-year Chinese bamboo theory, where you'll plant the seed and actually you keep watering it over 7 years, and then suddenly your bamboo will pop up.
You guys came up with the acts, which I imagine took a lot of thought of how to do them. But have you found now that, like, once you've come up with them and we've said, like, these are the 8 acts, has one of them been slightly more challenging to implement at Urge than another?
So they build incrementally, so by difficulty eventually. And Educate and Accelerate is really going to those who are really invested in the science, the technology, the politics, the policies of the green transition, and understanding how you can use your skills to kind of further and make their business practice better. When we came up with the 8 acts of emergency and the toolkit, because based on the learning from Architects Declare and Engineers Declare, where there wasn't necessarily a framework or resources in place when they launched. And so the 8 acts of emergency were there as something that people could align to when they signed the declarations. So, okay, this would make sense to follow these guides or these 8 acts as a kind of way to kind of shift practice as a kind of statement. Finally,
if you're talking about design declares or wanting to get more people on board, what's the thing you say? How do you, what's your go-to for saying, this is what we are, come and take part?
What is my Design Declares elevator pitch?
Yeah, what is your Design Declares elevator pitch?
It is the best community in the design sector right now, and you must be part of it, because it is the designers who are engaged in responding to some of the bigger challenges of our times. I think most people go, oh, what's that? Oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, great. In a way, you don't necessarily need to sell it. It sort of sells itself.
Yeah.
But I say, it's a community of designers who are kind of united in a mission to kind of respond.
Yeah, and we're here to
challenges using the skills that we have.
And we're here to help each other and get the message across.
Yeah.
And the more of us there are, the quicker we can get there, I think.
Yeah.
Alexie, brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I hope that certainly made sense.
I'm sure we'll find something.
Well, there won't be too many.